welcome back to another episode of Eternal Memories. In this episode, right off the heels of the release of Contra War Corps, which I didn't expect to happen, I actually vividly remember the C preview tease at E3 2011, and it never came out. And now that same C logo is in this War Corps game that took who knows how long to develop. But yeah, it's out. People may not like it. I know people don't like how it looks, especially. And I'll admit that on Switch it looks like Vaseline was dumped on it. But I had fun with the demo, and I hope the full game is decent, so future Contra, please tell me it's good. But yeah, World Corps is out, there's a new Contra's back in the mainstream, there's a cool anniversary collection with all the old games, so even if you don't like World Corps, you can buy the anniversary collection and go to town, have fun with all the good Contras, from Contra Arcade, Contra 2, Super C, not Contra 3, Hard Corps, and Operation C. You can play all those games in the arcade, well, not arcade collection, that's separate, but the anniversary Contra collection. So yeah, time to cover one of my favorite arcade games of all time. And yes, I said arcade. The subject of today's episode, Contra, is more known for being an NES game released in 1988. But in 1987 they released it originally as an arcade 2-player game made by Konami. And it's a really good one, if I may just say it outright. So yeah, it came out in 1987, and you know, it didn't set the arcades on fire. The NES version sure did. And then they followed up with sequels like Super Contra and then Super C. And then they got full-blown stuck on consoles after Contra 3D Alien Wars. And ever since then we've had mostly highs, except for the few downs like Contra 3, the PS1 games, and debatably Neo Contra, which is why people are worried about World Corps. And yeah, I can see why maybe a down if you don't like Neo Contra or the top-down segments. But I do, so I'm optimistic for that game, though I wish we got better Switch ports. But anyways, let's stop talking about the okay or bad Contra games. We can go into where it all started with a good classic.
So fans of this game might be wondering why I'm starting with this original version of the game instead of the well-known NES port. Honestly, that just has to do with the fact that I prefer this version significantly more than the NES, and I'll explain why I find this easier to go back to time and time again compared to that home port, despite playing that one first. I'll save my introduction to the franchise as a whole for when I cover the NES version, but I will show how I fell in love with this arcade release. So around 7 years ago, I was playing the Pokemon TCG in a town a bit far from my home, since that's where the only state tournaments used to be held. I mentioned in Unscripted Memories how I played the game for a long while, even during some ups and downs in my career, and dealing with some bullies and being a jerk myself. So this was back during the black and white era of the game, when all that happened. My best friend Paul tagged along with me as well, since he was also into the game until the middle of 2013, where he just dropped out to focus on other activities. We were minding our own business and playing our 3DSs during a lunch break during a tournament once, when we learned that there was a retro gaming store right around the corner. It was in the middle of October and we had a whole hour to kill, so we decided to make the most of it and visit the store. And man, I still love thinking about that store. It blew my mind the first time we went there. They sold a variety of the usual NES and Genesis titles you see almost everywhere, but they also had some stuff from the Neo Geo Pocket Color, the Game Gear, and even Virtual Boy stuff, along with some rarer SNES and Genesis titles. But the best part of the store by far was the arcade in the back of the store. Here was my first taste of a true, proper arcade after only playing games in hotels and restaurants, and even those were usually on crappy multicades, or just the same Miss Pac-Man and Galaga combo machine over and over and over again. But no, this back room was a real arcade with some rare games. There were only like 10 games or so in the back room, with one of them being at the front of the store, but to my memory the games included in the arcade was the Versus versions of Gradius, Castlevania, and Super Mario Bros., a PlayChoice 10 machine with Goonies, Mario 1, 2, 3, Lonoid, and Double Dragon, a Neo Geo MVS with Metal Slug X and some other games, and they actually preserved this cabinet and moved it to a local adults-only arcade, so I actually have pictures of this one to show for you guys. And finally, the arcade version of Contra. Back then, I only went for the free Versus cabinets and Goonies 1 to PlayChoice 10, since they were easily the rarest games I had ever seen in the wild at that point, and I hadn't played any of them before. So, vs. Castlevania was my introduction to the Castlevania franchise, as me and Paul took turns in that cabinet. However, in the background, I could still hear the title scream theme to Contra echoing through the room, and while I was tempted to play it for myself along with Paul, I had limited funds and would rather play games I couldn't play ever before, so I ended up watching two men wander in and play up to the 4th stage on a single credit, which was cool to see at least. Unfortunately, the arcade closed down in early 2013, and most of the cabinets were sold to the adults-only arcade, with most machines breaking down or being sold elsewhere across the country over the years. I remember hearing a rumor that the Vs. Castlevania and Gradius cabinets would donate to the Galloping Ghost arcade, but I'm not sure on that one, cause they could be anywhere. Afterwards, I really got addicted to Super C when it launched in the 3DS eShop, and then I heard that since the NES version of Contra was strangely absent from digital stores, the only way you could play a re-release of the first Contra was by playing Contra 4 or this Konami arcade compilation for the DS. Since the arcade collection included other games I want to play on my 3DS anyway, I put it on my birthday list and got it for my birthday in 2014. So before we go over the actual game in detail, let's look at the port I grew up with. First things first, this compilation is excellent. It was made by M2 in the earlier days and includes a bunch of flyers and other goodies, making this one of the best retro game compilations on the DS. The games look crisp and sharp, and the vertical tiles are a bit squished. Since Contra is vertical, that means it looks like this, which isn't really that good. You can flip the screen sideways and play that way, but it's not practical in my book. Unlike the Switch's Contra compilation, which looks fantastic in vertical mode thanks to the flip grip. Still, this is a great port of the arcade with tight controls, download play co-op, and even a replay saving function. So thus I had to get used to this arcade version since I had no access to my NES card at the time. So I played this compilation pretty religiously for this and Gradius. With that out of the way, let's get into the actual game itself. While the NES version includes 8 stages, the arcade only includes 5, alternating between a side view and a front view shooter. Since this is the first game in the series, I'm also gonna go over the general controls, mechanics, and power-ups so I won't have to later. So normally you have a jump button and a fire button as the only two to worry about. In both the Contra and Konami collections, you can also toggle on and off rapid fire to prevent your hands from wearing out, so that's why I tend to use when it's available to me. You can also aim in 8 directions, and that's pretty much it for the side view. The front view is a lot more annoying, since while the controls are the same, the perspective is a bit confusing. I've gotten used to these stages by now, but for many years I just hated these stages due to how hard the bullets were to see. But since I learned that you only have to blow up the small core in each room to clear it, I just blaze through these in no time at all with minimal effort. Both views support a variety of power-ups that the two characters can equip, from a machine gun that's only really useful if you don't have rapid fire, a fire wheel that misses everything in sight, a laser that pierces normal enemies but is bad against bosses, to the ultimate weapon that everyone knows, known as the spread shot. Everyone has sung the praises of this weapon already, but once you get a hold of this, you can easily murder everything in sight, which makes holding onto this as long as possible the key to victory. There's also this R item that I think is supposed to give you another bullet on screen, but it's near useless, so I just ignore them. Stage 3 and 5 also have this invincibility item that makes Stage 3 a total joke and Stage 5 a bit easier. It's pretty self-explanatory. So with all the power-ups and controls out of the way, let's get into why I love this version so much. For one, the 8-way direction feels a lot less tight than the NES version, which may sound like a downgrade, until you remember the fact that this is a one-and-gun, and the ability to just wave the shots around at more than a fixed angle is just so much fun for me, because I can hit a wider array of targets. Considering how getting a huge score in this game requires that you shoot as many enemies as possible, I can see why they stuck with this looser aim for an arcade environment that's more high score focused than an NES. Some people told me they can't get into the arcade version for this very reason, but that gets extra points in my book as I love score chasers, and I think adjusting the game to be a score chaser was a smart move. The next factor into why I love the arcade Contra so much is because it's much shorter than the NES version, and the pacing of the game bare benefits the score chasing aspect as a result. So I mentioned earlier that there are 5 stages to be seen in the arcade Contra, right? Where it alternates from a side view jungle stage with a simple boss, to a front view base stage with a simple boss, back to a vertical scrolling side view jungle stage that's a complete joke if you get the invincibility, and doesn't even have a proper boss, back again to another base stage that has led another simple boss to the final stage that's actually worth talking about in detail. You see, in the NES version, the alternating between side and front stages would stop after this point, with 4 side view stages to complete. In this arcade original, however, this is one long gauntlet through the snowy fields, a mechanical base, and an alien-infested lair, all in one seamless transition. This is easily the longest stage in the game, but each segment is way shorter than the NES counterparts, which works well with the score-chasing nature of the game, while also providing for a fun final challenge. Especially since the mini-bosses here are actually fun and challenging compared to the same ducks from all the other stages. Once you make it to the very end of the 5th stage and find this heart and destroy it, you get way more points than anyone deserves to have, as the game epically fades to the credits. As a starting point for the franchise, this holds up amazingly well as an arcade score chaser, and I'd gladly spend hours in the wheel cabinet if I ever find one. But as an action game, it's also worth playing to test your own skills. And I love to play a version with online leaderboards just to beat my own high scores against other people. I know the 360 and PS4 versions have the online leaderboards, but not the Anniversary Collection, unfortunately. Last but not least is the co-op mode. While Contra is fun solo, a friend makes it even better. However, the game slows down to ridiculous levels when you're both firing at the same time, and the 6 credits you're limited to might not even be enough if your friend constantly dies. But when you have someone with a sense of scale, this can be a fun time, and it's still beatable in co-op for sure, just a tiny bit harder.
But yeah, that's all why I love the arcade version of Contra more than the NES one. It's not a popular opinion, but not a bad opinion in the sense that, you know, it's a bad game. Thus, people liking bad games is kind of controversial. It's just more people like the NES one because that's what they grew up with, and it's more refined, it's more tight, and it's more lengthy for the purposes of beating it. But as a score chaser fan, as someone who likes getting high scores and saving them just to best my own times or records in whatever way I can, the arcade Contra is a really good arcade game. You can, even if you beat the game with the crazy score bonus it gives you, you still have to find some way to keep the credits low so you can make it to that point, and if you do a 1 credit clear, that's even better. So yeah, it's a great high score game. I love the pieces, and I love the sequel to pieces too. But I think if I do review another Contra, it's going to be Super Contra on the arcade or Contra on the NES. So that may just be briefer because it's mostly this again. But Super C, oh, I'm excited to cover that one day. But yeah, Contra is a great arcade game, and I just had a lot of fun talking about how I love this arcade game. People don't even know the DS compilation I showed off existed. I only found out about it because of a forum post from Nintendo Life back in late 2013. And I'm glad I got it because it was a really good way of playing Contra and the other games in the collection before, well, the Contra Anniversary Collection came out. Now that's easily the best way to play it because of the aforementioned flip grip, and also it has a cool replay feature and lots of high score saving because you can use save states. No online leaderboards, as I mentioned, but hey, I'll buy a Contra arcade port on the Xbox 360 if I ever get one of those. Whenever that'll be. Not much of an Xbox guy. But yeah, thank you for watching another Eternal Memories, and next time, I'm gonna cover one of the rarest Japanese Famicom games to ever come out, and talk about how I grew up with it for a few years and why I ended up making me a big fan of shooters in general. So yeah, stay tuned for the next episode. Bye!